They treated her like a nobody from the moment she walked onto the pier. A small, quiet woman in a faded jacket, hands tucked into her pockets, waiting patiently by the railing as the USS Truman towered over the water like a steel mountain. Sailors moved with purpose. Officers barked orders. No one noticed her until they did. Security spotted her lingering near the restricted walkway. She wasn't climbing anything. She wasn't touching anything. She was simply standing there. But in a place where egos were loud and authority louder, a woman who didn't look intimidated became a threat in their eyes. The MPs approached with the confidence of men who believed they'd already won. They asked her questions she didn't answer fast enough. They asked for documents she didn't immediately provide. A small hesitation, a misunderstood sentence. And suddenly, they decided she was trespassing on federal property. She didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look afraid when they spun her around and clicked cuffs around her wrists. People stared. Some laughed. A few recorded. To them, she was just another civilian who didn't know when to stay in her lane. But the woman didn't panic. She stayed calm, almost too calm, as they walked her down the pier with unnecessary force. She kept glancing at the ship, not the MPs, not the crowd, not the cuffs. Her eyes stayed locked on the Truman, tracking every tower, every radar dome, every crew movement with a familiarity that no civilian should have had. The MPs didn't notice. They were too busy enjoying their moment of authority. Then the Admiral arrived. He had been conducting an inspection on deck when word reached him that shore security had detained a suspicious female trespasser. Annoyed, he walked down the gangway expecting a troublemaker or a protester. Instead, he froze. The Admiral's face drained the second he saw her. The woman in cuffs lifted her head, and recognition hit him like a blow. His step faltered. His breath caught. He muttered something the MPs didn't hear. And before anyone understood what was happening, he barked one sharp order. Get those cuffs off her. Now, every MP stiffened. The Admiral never raised his voice. Ever. But this time, even the ship seemed to go silent. The simple woman they had just arrested wasn't simple at all. And the Admiral knew exactly who they had just dragged across his pier in handcuffs. The Admiral didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The entire pier shifted the moment he stepped forward, his presence cutting through the tension like a blade. The MP straightened instinctively, shoulders tight, eyes flicking between their prisoner and the man who outranked everyone within miles. And in the center of it all, the woman they dragged in like a criminal stood silently, hands cuffed, clothes dusty, breathing steady. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't pleading. If anything, she looked tired. Tired in a way that hinted at too many years spent holding herself together, not expecting anyone to stand up for her. The Admiral's gaze softened when it fell on her, and something shifted under the surface. Recognition, memory, something layered and old. The MPs didn't notice. They only saw a threat they thought they were neutralizing, a protocol they believed they were following, and a trespass they thought they were correcting. They didn't see the weight of her presence, the familiarity in the Admiral's eyes, or the way the deck crew had gone silent, as if they already sensed the story wasn't what the HOA-style security patrol had assumed. A breeze rolled across the pier, lifting the woman's hair, carrying the smell of salt water and jet fuel. The Truman loomed behind her, engines humming at idle, the kind of mechanical heartbeat that radiated authority across the entire base. Sailors paused on the catwalks, watching the scene unfold with the same tension as if a storm cloud had appeared directly overhead. Everyone sensed something was off, but none more than the Admiral. He studied the cuffs, the bruises forming around her wrists, the fear hidden behind the rigid posture of the MPs. Then he shifted his attention to the security logs one officer was holding, the paperwork they clearly expected him to endorse with a nod and a signature. A neat narrative had been prepared. An unidentified civilian crossing into a restricted naval zone. A potential threat. A violation worthy of force. But the Admiral didn't look convinced. Instead, he turned the situation over in his mind, sifting through the details. This pier was sealed, guarded, impossible to reach without intent. Yet the woman didn't look like someone who'd snuck in with malicious purpose. There was no panic in her eyes, no desperation, only a quiet acceptance, as if she'd faced worse and survived worse. She held her ground, not like someone resisting authority, but someone who had known it intimately, someone who had once trusted it. Meanwhile, on the deck above, sailors whispered to each other in small groups, piecing together rumors. Some thought she was a protester. Others assumed she was lost. But a few sensed there was something deeper in the way the Admiral stood between her and the men holding her. He wasn't confused. He wasn't uncertain. He was angry in a cold, measured way that only surfaced when principles were crossed, principles he wasn't willing to compromise. The MPs shifted uncomfortably, realizing the simple arrest they expected to be praised for had become something else entirely. Protocols didn't protect them now. Their decision hung in the air, suspended under the Admiral's scrutiny. And the woman, still cuffed, still silent, watched with a composure that didn't match the chaos around her. She wasn't afraid of their weapons, their uniforms, or the consequences. She'd already endured worse moments in life, and something in her posture hinted that this confrontation was only scratching the surface of a much larger story. The Admiral finally broke the silence, not with words, but with a slow step closer, studying her like he was confirming a truth he hadn't allowed himself to believe. The witnesses around them sensed the shift. The MPs straightened again, waiting for orders. The sailors leaned in slightly, trying to read the situation, and the woman lowered her eyes, not out of guilt, but out of exhaustion, as if she already knew what came next, and the weight of it was too much to carry alone. The base held its breath. The Truman's deck vibrated faintly under the distant machinery, and the Admiral, now certain of who stood in front of him and what her presence meant, exhaled with the heaviness of a man who had spent years preparing for every possible crisis. Except this one. Nothing about this arrest was a mistake. It was a warning, and he understood it far too late. The Admiral removed the cuffs himself. The MPs stepped back, realizing the ground beneath them had shifted in a way they never expected. The woman didn't flee or crumble. She simply stood there, as if reclaiming air she'd been forced to surrender. The sailors on deck watched with a reverence usually reserved for ceremonies, sensing that something unspoken had bonded the Admiral and this quiet stranger long before today. Word spread across the pier faster than orders could. Everyone learned who she truly was, a figure woven into the Admiral's past, someone whose sacrifices had shaped the very careers of the men now questioning her presence. Her arrival wasn't an accident. It was a reckoning that had finally reached the waterfront. The Admiral didn't call for punishment. He called for accountability. The arrest logs were cleared, the MPs reassigned, and the entire base reminded that authority without understanding becomes tyranny. As the Truman prepared for departure, she remained on deck beside him. The storm broken, the truth restored, and every witness left with a story they would never forget.